What's going on, guys? Alex here with 814 EDC, and today I'm ready to do my full review on quite possibly the biggest knife I've ever had in on the channel, the Kizer knives and Momo. Now, I've had some pretty big folders in before. You guys know big folders are really not my forte. I don't tend to gravitate towards them very often. Like 3.5 inches on the blade is kind of my, oops, getting a phone call in. Had to cancel that one real quick. 3.5 inches on the blade is kind of my max on knives that I tend to carry. And this one comes in at over 4 inches. Now you guys can tell right away, this is a big knife. I just reviewed the Militaw, and the Militaw is, I would call a medium-sized folder. And this one makes the Militaw look small. So this is the Momo, like I said, and this is in via the Lefty passaround group. It is part of the packaging or package with the Militaw and the Banish, courtesy of Kevin over Lefty EDC. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I didn't carry this knife. I really didn't have a whole lot of interest with it other than, just kind of playing with it around the house. I did use it to cut up a few vegetables. I made sure to wipe the blade down and everything like that, but to me, that is what this knife is basically is a folding kitchen knife. I think that's what it's kind of gravitated towards. So I didn't carry the knife. It's just too big for something that I personally want to carry. I don't think the pot clip is very good. It's just not my style of knife. So you take everything I say with a grain of salt, because I just, coming into it, whenever I knew I was getting the package, I primarily wanted it for the Militaw. The Banish interests me a little bit just because it was a Jacob Lundquist design, and I like supporting Jacob and checking out a lot of his new models. And the Momo was definitely on the last little bit of that list for me. I just wasn't a huge fan of it. Knew I wasn't really going to like it too much. Not saying I don't love the knife. Not saying I hate the knife. I just don't love the knife. So without further ado, we're going to jump into the review here. Talk about some materials first, and do all the specific things we like to do here on 814 EDC, if I can talk correctly for you guys. Currently, there is only one version of this knife out, and that is this one right here. But you have some aluminum scales right here. Have a nice matte finish to them. I really do like the fact that Kizer does that finish on their aluminum. Scratches easily, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I like it from a fit and finish standpoint. You have a little bit of a bolster up here, which is just a different color of aluminum. You have a milled clip that is only right-hand carry. You leaves about that much sticking up out of your pocket, which I'm not a huge fan of. You have a backspacer with a lanyard loop right there. You have a big front flipper, which is the only way to deploy the knife. Pops right out. You have this, again, kitchen style blade. We'll see if it has anything. All right, so they're just calling it a drop point on Kizer's website. Right there is the Momo logo, or the Momo, and then the logo of the designer. You have Kizer 154 cm. I don't think it's a bad looking knife, which we'll talk about in aesthetics, but yeah. As for internal milling, there are pockets on both sides of the liners for internal milling. It's still a pretty hefty boy. And of course, you have a liner lock for closing the blade. You guys can see it's pretty hefty free dropper. But as far as materials go, really have no issues at all with them. So it's going to get a 5, possibly the only 5 on the list, which I hate to say, but it is what it is. Next up is aesthetic. And if this thing was smaller, I would like the aesthetic more. I don't mind the blade shape. I think it's a pretty interesting looking blade shape. You have a ton of belly down in here, and then it straightens out to a really pointy tip. As far as overall look goes, I don't think it looks bad, and it's just too big for me. The pot clip, while it functions horribly in my opinion, carries not very well, I do think it looks kind of cool the way it's kind of mounted up here on the scale. I just wish they would have maybe done a screw back here to gain more pocketability or more carryability. But from an aesthetic standpoint, it looks pretty good. It's really thin, and I don't mind the way this knife looks. So I think that's going to be a pretty high ranking as well. I'll give it a 4. I think if it was a lot smaller, more pocketable, more my size, might get a 5, because I really do think the way the knife flows and has a nice look to it. It looks pretty solid. But next up is action. I'm not a huge fan of this front flipper. It functions okay, but that's, mean, sometimes you can get a middle finger flick down here, but let's see if I can go 3 in a row. All right, so you can do the middle finger flick. So I guess it's not technically the only way to deploy the knife, but it's the primary way you can see. And I mean, you have plenty of, leverage up here. D10 is relatively light for the knife, but again, you have plenty of leverage. Pops it right out. Just kind of awkward because again, it's a bigger knife for me, and you just have to kind of hold on to that clip a little bit, and then it just pops right out. It's just awkward. You really have to like hold on to it and like reach up top here, because if you do it, I mean, you can do it down here, but it just is an awkward way to hold the knife. And same thing with your left hand. You're kind of just holding onto the scale right here. It pops out. Middle finger flick again, you can do it, but it's not the most strongest flick in the world, but you definitely can. Overall, I'm not a huge fan of the action. I mean, it's okay. It does have a really nice drop to it, but I'm not going to drop it on your nail, because that point right there, the little bit of a choil, it lands with such an impact on your nail. I did it a few times when I first unboxed it and was kind of playing around with it, and it almost broke, through my fingernail. I really don't want that to happen. So, it gets right there and bang. So it does have a really nice drop shut. But what would you expect when you have a 4.7-inch blade, coming down at you? That is one thing I did not go over with you guys real quick. So let me get some specs. So blade length is 4.19 inches. Very, very big blade. Blade thickness is 0.12. So as big as the blade is, it has a really nice thickness to it, or thinness to it. Comes down to a thin edge, makes for a really good, cutter, again, for kitchen tasks. Weighs 5.37 ounces, which is really quite heavy. But again, you have a big knife. Overall length when fully open is 9.45 inches. Again, too big of a knife for me, but it is what it is. Big knives aren't for everybody, and this knife isn't for everybody. So, just like I said, you have to take everything with a grain of salt. And, always remember that when you guys are listening to my reviews. And I'm not trying to, that's a point you should be making with everybody that does reviews. You just have to take everything all these knife YouTubers do with a grain of salt, and, form your own opinions based off of the opinions you're hearing from, people like me and, other people. So, wow. Excuse me. All right, where was I? Got off topic a little bit. Action. So, good close. I'll give it a 4. I don't think it's 3 or 3.5 worthy. It definitely has a decent enough D10, and the fact that you can middle finger flick it and drop it and things like that. It's okay. Just awkward for me because, again, it's so big, and that's what I keep coming back to. It's just too big of a knife for me, but it does get a 4 on the action. As for acoustics, see, and if I try to get it out of the way, like my thumb out of the way, the handle's too skinny for me to have it like, how you can release it and then move your thumb out of the way real quick and then it'll free drop. So I can't really get that acoustic going for you guys, but nothing spectacular. Not really doing anything for me. Go with 3.5 on the acoustics. Ergos. It's probably my favorite thing about this knife is how comfortable it is. But you have a really skinny handle. Of course, it's almost a straight line from here to here. You do have a little bit of a curvature going on. Tapered off back here with the lanyard tube or lanyard hole. And then it tapers off and through here, but real skinny on the handle. Plenty of room for 4 fingers. You can choke up here with this kind of little choke up point if you really want to get like good control over this knife, if you're doing like specific cuts or whatever it may be. And I have plenty of handle on the back there for probably 3 or 4 more fingers. Choked back, if you're gonna be doing some like kind of chopping or whatever cuts you decide to do with this knife, you can choke the whole way back. You can kind of get in the middle. Pinch grip works pretty well for kind of pushing down on vegetables or things like that. really, it's the only, I mean, the only good thing about this knife, I think, is my favorite part, I guess, is the comfortability from the handle. And that's just because you have so much real estate for it. And that's kind of a good thing with, not definitely, that's not kind of a good thing. It definitely is a good thing with big knives that you just have so much real estate for your hands. The milled clip is pretty, pretty well flush to the scale. So it's not really causing a hot spot. Can't really feel it that much when you're, in grippage mode. You can swing this around if you had to use it for some gas station knife fights with Kevin over a Slurpee. This thing would definitely do some damage. You have a really big blade there, really nice pommel up top there to kind of grip onto with your thumb. And you could do some slashing and dashing with this. Would definitely do some damage. But the aluminum has a really nice matte finish to it, like I said earlier. No sharp edges, no rough jimping or anything like that. So as far as ergos go, big knives, plenty of real estate. It's going to get a 5. Now carry. I'm going to give this, and like I said, I didn't carry this knife outside of the house just because I didn't want to. It was too big of a knife. I did put it in my pants pocket, and it stuck out like this far, and it's really big and very obtrusive. I'm going to give this a 1. I think that might be the lowest score I've ever given a knife before, in a specific category. But I'm just honestly not a fan of it. It's too big. I mean, it sits in your pocket, and again, I mean, you literally have that much sticking up out of your pocket. If you're going to make a big knife, at least put or design a pot clip that sits pretty well flush to the scale, whether you have a little bit sticking about there just because of the handle design or anything like that, that's fine. But when you choose to mount the clip like you did, and I mean, I just don't appreciate having that much knife sticking up out of your pocket when you already have so much in it. One nice thing, I guess, there's no jimping. There's nothing over here that's going to be unobtrusive or obtrusive when you're down in your pocket getting things, like change, chapstick. But this thing sits so far down your pocket, it takes up a lot of your pocket. Yeah, just not it for me. Wasn't a big fan, and that's why it's getting a 1. So, but now that takes me to price point / value and what I recommend this knife. Can't say I would recommend this knife. Let me say this. I don't want to say that because it's not factually true. If you guys are looking for, if you guys are into big knives and you are into kitchen folders, then yes, I can recommend this to you. But that's a very niche knife to try to look for. I mean, again, I think it looks okay, but it's just too big. It doesn't carry very well. Action is okay. It's just a mad knife, and I feel bad because I try not to be too hard on knives, but really just didn't really do it for me. Price point on the Momo is $109, which I think is fair, especially when you're getting aluminum, 154 cm on the blade, front flipper. I mean, you get a lot of knife for about $100, so I really can't complain there. So I think it's a decent value. I have no issues with the price point there. But I just, I'm only going to recommend it to people that want a large knife in a kitchen size or a kitchen style folder in a large format. And that basically gets you the Momo. But for me, I'm going to gravitate more towards the Spidey Chef, 15 times out of 10 over the Momo, and some other stuff like that. So value and price point, I do think is okay. So I'm going to give it a 5 on that. I really have no issues with that whatsoever. But this is definitely not going to be a very high scoring review, and I think you guys have pretty much picked up on that already. But 1, 2, 3. Alrighty, guys. So the Momo is officially the lowest scored knife that I've ever done by 1 point. So it is getting a 23.5. And the real contributor to that score is the fact that it's just such a pain in the butt for me to carry. And I think for a lot of people to carry, I just doesn't do it for me. And I wasn't a fan of it all. So that really led it to being the lowest scored. Beats the Kizer K by 1 point. They're both, as of right now, the only knives that I've ever reviewed less than 25 points. And I think at the end of the year, when I go back and look at my list, I don't think there's going to be very many knives on there. So It is what it is, but I just try to give you guys my true, honest opinions. I try not to sugarcoat too many things because I want you guys to really know how I'm feeling and what my thoughts are on a knife. And my thoughts on the Momo is it's meh. So, but I do always appreciate Kevin for letting me check stuff out like this. Gives me more content for you guys, gives you guys more videos to watch and things of that nature. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap this up now. But before I go, drop a comment down below. Did you guys, pick up a Momo? Are you like me? Do you hate big knives? Are you unlike me? Do you love big knives? I would love to hear what you guys have to say. But yeah, so this was my full review on the Kizer Knives Momo, a big behemoth, mediocre knife. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap this up. But thank you guys again so much for watching. I greatly appreciate each and every single one of you guys. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your morning, evening, day, night, weekend, week, whenever you guys are watching this, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. Peace.